Preséntese usted mismo ante nuestros lectores.
I'm Gabe Evans. I was born and raised in Colorado, but my story actually starts before that. It starts with my abuelito, who was born in Cuauhtemoc, Mexico, and came to the United States. He earned his citizenship in World War II, fighting on the European front, 2 Purple Hearts. And so growing up here in Colorado, that was my role model. That's who I looked up to. Same thing on my dad's side. He was a career naval officer. And so from a very young age, it was taught to me, you love your country, you love your state, you love your community, you protect your family. And so that's why after I finished school, I spent 12 years in the U.S. Army and the Colorado Army National Guard, 1 combat deployment overseas, and then the wildfires, the search and rescues, everything that we do here in Colorado as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. So we did a lot of work in the mountains, rescuing folks, fighting fires, the floods and lions, things like that. And then did another 10 years in law enforcement with the city of Arvada as a police officer. I started as a patrol officer and then worked my way up to lieutenant, where I was the night shift watch commander.
¿Por qué dejó la carrera policial y entró a la política?
Because I saw what happened to our communities, to our families, with the crime that we have in Colorado now. When I started my law enforcement career in 2011, Colorado was still above the national average for our crime rate. We were still a safe state. We are now the 3rd worst state in the nation for crime. And this isn't just things like the auto theft. We know that we're the #1 state in the nation for the auto theft. We're actually the #1 state in the nation, or were very recently, for bank robberies. But this is things like the drugs, the fentanyl. Fentanyl overdose deaths are up 800% over the last few years. We are the #2 state in the nation for teenagers overdosing and dying because of illegal drugs like fentanyl. And as a police officer, I not only saw those problems, but I saw why they were happening. And they were happening because of policies from progressive, liberal, leftist Democrats who were continuing to pass laws that made it harder for police officers to do our job and made it easier for drug dealers to continue selling drugs. My opponent in this race actually voted for and supported the bill that lowered the penalty for drug dealers and fentanyl dealers in Colorado. And since then, again, we've seen that 800% increase. And so as a police officer, I couldn't change the laws. You know, when the penalty was lowered for drug dealers, there's nothing I can do about that as a cop. The law changed. And so I stepped out of law enforcement and I got involved in politics. I'm a current state representative. I represent from the edge of Commerce City to the edge of Greeley and Adams and Weld counties. I've been down at the state capitol for 2 years, fighting to try to make our communities safe again, fighting to protect our kids. Fentanyl, it takes 1 time, 1 dose, and you're dead. And so there's no way to have a safe amount of this stuff. We have to oppose it. And we can't do that when I've got progressive leftist Democrats like my opponent who are making it easier to deal this stuff in our communities. So that's what I've been fighting for down at the state capitol. That's what I'm going to continue to fight for in Congress.
¿Cuál es su principal desafío como padre en este momento?
Been married to my wife, mi esposa, for 15 years. We have 2 boys, 8 and 12 are their ages. And it's scary to think about us being the #2 state in the nation for teenagers dying on drugs. My son turns 13 in about 5 months. And I want to make sure that he gets a good education. I want to make sure that he has a safe place to grow up in. I want to make sure that he has the same American dream that my mom and my abuelito gave to me. And so that's the other reason why I'm doing this, because I want to make sure that we have that safe, secure, prosperous future for my kids, for everybody else's kids, for our families to be able to grow up.
Revele algún tipo de pasatiempo que usted tenga.
I was born at Mississippi and 225 in Aurora. So born and raised in Colorado, but I grew up out on the Eastern Plains a little bit. And so I really like longhorn cattle. My grandma raised longhorns, and when she got too old to ranch anymore, she gave me the last couple of cattle that she had. So I raise a few cows now. I don't have a lot of land. I can raise like 2 or 3 cows a year. But I really like longhorn cattle. I really like raising them, and I enjoy that lifestyle.
¿Cómo le ayudó el ser piloto en su actividad como legislador?
So to fly a Black Hawk helicopter takes 4 people. You have 2 pilots and 2 crew chiefs. They're the guys that have the machine guns, and they look out the window, they manage the cargo, they manage the passengers. And so to be able to safely operate that aircraft, whether you're in a combat zone overseas or whether you're doing a search and rescue here in Colorado, everybody in that crew has a different job, but they all have to be able to work together and share that information in order to make the mission successful. And that's really what we're trying to do down at the state legislature. How does everybody bring the unique perspectives of their community to the conversation and ultimately work together to get bills passed to make things better for all of Colorado? And so that was something that I did very well down at the state legislature. My party, I'm Republican. We're in a super minority. There's 19 Republicans to 46 Democrats. They have complete control. But I was still able to get almost 60% of my bills passed because I can work together with these folks. I can find common ground to come up with ideas and then get those ideas passed that make our families safer. I'll give you an example. We passed a bill that made our schools safer by giving law enforcement the tools that they need to be able to go and hold someone accountable if they call in a fake active shooter threat to our schools. Swatting is how you'll hear it referred to. And when that fake call gets made, the school goes on lockdown, the kids are traumatized, the teachers are traumatized, the staff is traumatized, the families are traumatized, all of the first responders are traumatized. And then you find out, oh, this was just a fake threat. Somebody was just, calling this in to create problems and chaos and confusion. That's dangerous. That takes away learning days for our kids. That makes it dangerous for law enforcement. That kids carry that trauma with them of thinking they're gonna die. And we did not have a law to be able to go after the folks that are doing this to our kids. And so I was able to work together to get a law passed that gives law enforcement the resources they need to go hold folks accountable when they traumatize an entire school by calling in a fake active shooter threat. And I was able to get that passed by working together down at the state capitol. It's the same skill set that I learned in the Army, talking and working together with everybody on the crew of the helicopter. We all have different jobs, but we all have to share information and work together.
Nombre de un demócrata con el que usted haya desarrollado una amistad.
So at the state representative level, I run several bills every year with Shannon Burke, representative from Westminster. She's a Democrat, and she will stand shoulder to shoulder with me to make sure that we are protecting our communities, keeping our families safe, and that we're giving our police officers the tools that they need in order to go catch drug dealers, fentanyl dealers, people like that. And she will fight her own party. Pretty much everyone else in her party will vote against her bills when she and I partner to do those things. We get some passed, we've had some killed, but she alone among, well, there's maybe 1 or 2 other folks. Shannon and I are very good friends.
But will you invite her to your birthday party?
I might. We've been in some tough fights together to keep our families safe.
¿Cuál cree usted que ha sido su principal logro como legislador?
So we talked about the bill that keeps our schools safe. I'm very proud of that one. Another bill that I'm very proud of that we were able to get passed was one to to be able to keep our roads safe from drunk and drugged driving. Again, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, meth, things like that. When we talk about DUIs, a lot of times it's actually DUIDs, driving under the influence of drugs. And Colorado, in 2022, we had more traffic fatalities, more roadway deaths than any year in the past 41 years. It was the most deadly year on Colorado roads since 1981. And again, part of the problem for that is folks like, my opponent have made it easier for drug dealers to come to Colorado. They've lowered the penalties for those drug dealers, so you have more drugs out in the community, which means you have more people driving under the influence, not just of alcohol, but of drugs. And that was a big part of what was driving those roadway deaths. And so we were able to pass a bill with Shannon Byrd, actually. We worked together to pass a bill to give law enforcement the tools that they need to be able to get folks off the roadway that are driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, to keep our roads safer.
Imagine que ya es enero de 2025. ¿Cómo presentaría usted por primera vez el Distrito 8 en el Congreso?
And it's very important because it produces energy, agriculture, and jobs. And those jobs it's how we provide for our families. And so what we need to do to lower the cost of living and allow the folks in District 8 to be able to afford to pay the bills, to afford to get food, to afford to send their kids to sports practice, is we need to help the economy. We need to empower the economy by removing red tape, removing government regulations, lowering taxes, lowering fees, and letting folks get and have good jobs and keep more money in their pocket. Because we can build it, we can make it, we can do it in the 8th Congressional District. We just need to have the freedom to do that so that we can all have, the best American dream, a safe and affordable future for ourselves and our families.
¿En qué comité congresional le gustaría estar?
Probably my favorite committee would be the Energy and Commerce Committee, because that is the 8th Congressional District. We produce so much energy in the northern part of the district, and then in the southern part of the district, that is the commercial hub of Colorado. Adams County is the only county in the state that has all 6 highways that are in Colorado. They all run through Adams County. So the truckers and the production and the roofers and the asphalt and the concrete and all of the things that make Colorado what it is, all of the building blocks of our life, they're made right here in the 8th Congressional District. And so being on the Energy and Commerce Committee allows me to have that voice, to speak to those issues, to make sure that we're protecting our jobs, to make sure that folks that I was meeting with the pipe fitters the other day, to make sure that their voice is heard so that they can continue to get a paycheck, keep more money in their pockets, and be able to afford to live in Colorado.
¿En cuál tema le gustaría trabajar en el Congreso?
Cost of living. Make it affordable to live here again.
¿Votaría usted a favor de una legislación que restrinja el aborto a al menos 15 semanas?
So I'm pro-life. I think the Supreme Court was very clear when they made their decision a couple of years ago. They said this is an issue that belongs to the states. So in Congress, I don't support a national abortion ban, and I think it's important that we have exceptions. I was a police officer. I worked with victims of rape, with victims of incest. My younger son, he was born and spent a month in the hospital almost because of the medical issues. I know we need to have exceptions for the life of the mother, the life of the child. So I don't support a national abortion ban.
¿Cuáles son las excepciones que usted acepta en el caso del aborto?
You have to have exceptions for rape, you have to have exceptions for incest, you have to have exceptions for life of the mother, life of the child.
¿Se necesita más o menos regulaciones con relación al fracking en el Distrito 8 de Colorado?
We make the cleanest energy in the United States of anywhere in the world. And I know that because I've been to other parts of the world. We need to allow our energy producers to make American energy and to do it in a responsible, clean way. And we can see that they're doing that. In Weld County, in the last decade, emissions from oil and gas have gone down anywhere from 52 to 65%. We make the cleanest energy anywhere in the world. And so we need to have common sense regulations to keep us all safe, but we have to get rid of these punitive regulations that are trying to drive the industry completely out of Colorado. We saw those in the state legislature this year, where bills were introduced that said, no oil and gas, period. That's horrible for Colorado, not just for the overall economy, that's terrible for schools. The school district where I live in lost $1 million because of overregulation on energy and oil and gas, and that being chased out of Colorado. If it leaves Colorado, we still need the same amount of energy. We're not reducing the energy demands for a modern society. But what we're doing is we're sending that production to other places that don't produce it nearly as responsibly or as clean as we do here.
¿Apoya usted la eliminación del Departamento de Educación de los Estados Unidos?
I think that education is best when parents, teachers, and students can all work together. So education needs to be at the local level. Congress can help, the Department of Education can help, but we need to audit the Department of Education. We need to make sure that all of that money is going to the states and ultimately to teachers, to students, and to classrooms. Right now, the Department of Education is just full of red tape. We need to make sure that that money is going where it belongs.
Deben ser ampliados los beneficios y los beneficiarios de Medicaid.
We can get more money into patients' and doctors' pockets tomorrow just by cleaning up a lot of the slush funds that exist in Medicaid. And I'll give you a specific example. I sit on a committee that has oversight of some of the Medicaid functions at the state level. And we've found tens of millions of dollars that are getting siphoned out of Medicaid and just going into these third-party contractor, I don't know what. I'm going to call it a slush fund because I don't know a better term to call it. So we can get tens of millions of dollars more into patients' pockets, into doctors' pockets, just by cleaning up these programs. So I don't think you need to expand Medicaid. I think we need to put patients and doctors back in charge. We need to get rid of the bureaucrats that are in the middle and that are messing up the affordability and the availability of actual healthcare.
¿Votaría usted a favor de las deportaciones masivas de personas sin estatus migratorio?
We got to do two things, well, actually three things in this space. The first thing is secure the border. Until the border is secure, you can deport somebody and they come right back. It's pointless. We've got to secure the border. But while we're securing the border, we have to make sure that there is a pathway for folks that legally want to come to the United States that doesn't take a decade. When I have this conversation with folks, they say the system's backwards. If you illegally come to the United States, you immediately get taxpayer funding. But if you try to do it the right way, you spend a decade trapped into bureaucracy. We need to switch that around. We need to secure the border to make sure that the cartels, the drug dealers, the criminals are staying out. But if you want to do it the right way, then we need to fix the broken immigration system so that can happen faster. Once we've done that, and while we're doing that, we need to make sure that we're focusing on the people who are illegally in the United States and committing crimes. Your drug dealers, your car thieves, your cartels, your terrorist sympathizers. Those are the people that we need to be targeting for deportation.
¿Considera usted que la congresista Yadira Carabeo es exitosa debido a su trabajo bipartidista?
She will say whatever she thinks she needs to say to stay in power. Just look at her voting record. She voted to lower the penalty for fentanyl dealers. She signed a letter saying that our border patrol needs to be defunded. But then she also is going to run TV ads and say she wants to work on the fentanyl problem. You can't go fix the problem that you made. That's a flip-flop. So she's saying whatever she thinks she needs to say to try to hold on to power. If you look at her voting record, she's voted to defund the police. She's voted to make it to lower the penalties for drug dealers. She's voted to make it easier to distribute fentanyl in our communities. She's voted against securing the border. She cost $7 billion, this district $7 billion, because of her attacks on the energy sector. She's driving family farms out of business. These aren't bipartisan policies here. This is just an election year, and she's saying what she thinks she needs to say.
¿Qué le preguntaría a la congresista Carabeo si usted la tuviera enfrente en este momento?
I would say, where do you stand? Because she changes her position all the time. She says whatever she thinks she needs to say to stay in power. And that's not just me saying that. Go look at Kyle Clark with 9 News. Kyle Clark's written stories about her recently where he says she's all over the map. And I think that when we send someone to Congress, we ought to know where that person stands. We ought to know where they believe, and they ought to be unafraid to speak up for that. That's what I've done 3 times in my life. I raised my right hand and said, I believe in my country so much, I will join the U.S. Army. I will give my life if needed for this country. Same thing for the Colorado Army National Guard, same thing for law enforcement. So I know where I stand. I'm not afraid to say where I stand, and I'm going to keep fighting to keep our families safe in Congress.
¿Qué tipo de militante republicano es usted?
So one of my good friends, Juan Ciscomani, he's another immigrant, born in Mexico, came to the United States, and I was having a conversation with him about this thing. And what I learned in that conversation with Juan is I'm a Gabe Evans Republican. And so what that means is I take the good stuff wherever I can find it. There's things Reagan said that I agree with. There's things Trump has said.
Which one? From Reagan?
No, I'm a Gabe Evans Republican. Like you said, I'm a new generation.
No, I know, but which element do you like from Reagan?
Yeah, from Reagan. I think one of the things that Reagan said that's so important is just about freedom in general. Freedom isn't transmitted in the blood. Every generation has to fight for that freedom. Reagan was a great communicator because he communicated great ideas. And so from Reagan, what I try to take is how to be able to have that conversation with anybody, how to be able to communicate these ideas that make our country better.
What do you take from Trump? What do you like from Trump?
Yeah, Trump, he has a little bit different style than Reagan. Trump just comes out and says it. And so when it comes to things like border security, when it comes to things like making our economy better, I think that we need to be unashamed about those things and just come out and say, we are going to hold fentanyl dealers accountable. We are going to keep the cartels and the criminals out of our country. We are going to make the economy affordable. And here's how we're going to do it.
¿Quién ganó las elecciones presidenciales del 2020?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden is the president. Or, yeah. Here's what I think about that presidential election. Look at the Hunter Biden laptop. That story broke in October. But if you talked about it in October, that was disinformation. Well, now we know that that's actually real. So I think there was some stories that were covered up until after the election, but I think that he won the election. I don't think it was fair that those stories were covered up, but I think he won the election.
¿Cuál plato mexicano le provocaría a usted ir a comer al terminar con esta entrevista?
Burritos, but it's got to be the burritos that my mom makes.
Your final message, few words.
Gabe Evans, born and raised in Colorado, 12 years in the Army, 10 years in law enforcement. I've been fighting for our families. I want to keep fighting for our families in Congress to keep them safe.
Thank you so much.